So, we're all very familiar with the fact that South Africa's entire system is corrupt to the core. Health, police, education, alles. And cherry on the cake, it's also really rotten to the core. How do I come to this conclusion? If anyone thinks that it's okay to argue in a harassment case, a judge no less, that culture should be taken into account. It's abhorrent and is definitely not a sign of leadership. And today, I just want to share with you two prime examples of so-called leadership. They aren't penalized. No. They get to use their positions of power and then argue that it was consensual. A no is a no. I'm not sure when highly educated mayors and judges forgot about that. So please join me as I ramble on about this. When people see everyone getting away with one crime, they feel very emboldened to do what they please. Before I continue, I quickly want to ask that you check that you've subscribed. Make sure to also drop a like, give this video a comment, and make sure to share. Really helps my channel grow, and I appreciate all the support. My last video was demonetized due to the content I was discussing, and that's fine. I don't want to profit off that video. I don't mind. But I am going to be beeping out a couple of words in this video so that I can monetize it, because at the end of the day, every penny counts. But bear with me, guys. It's still important. Action Society published an article that says, offenders have no place in public office. Remove Jeffrey Donson immediately. Donson was convicted in 2008 of statutory and assault of a 15-year-old girl. Although his sentence was later reduced on appeal, the conviction was upheld. It is unconscionable that a man found guilty of child continues to hold the title of executive mayor. And here we go. Here's the roller coaster for this particular individual. Action Society recently learned of new allegations of similar offences against Donson. Despite his conviction, Donson remained active in politics through the Independent Civic Organisation of South Africa. In November 2021, re-elected as mayor of Kannadal. Following a national outcry, he was removed in January 2022. So what a waste of effort, time and money. He was in office for 3 months. Just 10 months later, October 2022, he returned to office as new political maneuvers overturned the previous decision. Overturning previous decisions due to political maneuvers should be illegal in its own right. But this is the sort of ethics and morals we have in leadership. So in January 2023, Action Society launched a broader initiative to amend Section 47 and a part of the Constitution to prohibit anyone convicted of a serious or gender-based violence offence from holding public office. When ICOSA suspended Donson in October 2023, to date, he is still listed as the executive mayor in Kannadal's official municipal records. I checked, he is. So he's suspended from the political party, but he continues to run as executive mayor. Action Society says South Africa cannot claim to fight gender-based while tolerating convicted offenders in government. This is not a political issue. It's a moral issue. Leadership is a privilege, not a right. The fact that Donson still occupies the mayor's office years after being convicted of sex minor is a national disgrace. See, now this is the sort of placard I would like to make and go stand somewhere where the G20 cars are going to zoom by but I can only bet one of them blue light cars will drive me over. Absolutely abhorrent, a national disgrace. Cyril, you are for sure receiving a personally written letter from me, standing up in sauna, proclaiming gender-based violence as a focus, having all of those ladies ubu aga you, and then this is what I get to read. You, Cyril, as the leader of the ANC, is a national disgrace.
We continue to work across society to end the violence that is perpetrated against women. We have promulgated the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act, establishing a national structure to oversee a coordinated response to this crisis. We will ensure that the Council is fully functional and properly resourced. We continue to strengthen support to victims of gender-based violence. There are now 65 Tutuzela centers across the country. Out of the 52 districts in our country, 44 have gender-based violence shelters. All police stations in the country now have victim-friendly services. And another 16 sexual offenses courts will be established in the next financial year. Now,
the next story I want to discuss is the sexual harassment case that's been happening since 23rd of January 2023, where Miss Andiswe Mengo, a judge's secretary employed at the Eastern Cape High Court, filed a complaint of sexual harassment against Judge President Selby Mngeni. The complaint related to in-person and electronic interactions of a sexual nature between Mengo and Mngeni. These interactions were allegedly at the High Court building in Makanda and over the WhatsApp messaging service. These interactions allegedly took place between June 2021 and November 2022, both in person and online. Mengo complains that these interactions were unwanted and unwelcomed by her. Some of the key dates to keep in mind before I read the rest of this horror story is that the complaint was filed on the 23rd of January 2023. The tribunal only started on the 13th of January 2025. And then only on the 21st of October did the fourth and final sitting of the Judicial Conduct Tribunal commence. So now let's quickly look into the closing arguments for Mr. Judge and his harassment tribunal. This was absolutely shocking. So the closing arguments in this case is that it was not open to Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge to claim his persistent loaded WhatsApp messages to court secretary Andiswe Mengo were causa cultural courting. This was because the evidence clearly showed that it was harassment. Cultural courting, you've sent her an emoji of an eggplant, and I think it was a banana. How is that cultural courting? When did WhatsApp emojis become culturally significant? What a bunch of boop. Simply because in my Western culture, men like to use that too. What a shallow, morally incomprehensible argument. The records show that she had said no or indicated as such at least 13 times. The defendant's lawyer actually says the judge's conduct would be a dismissible offense in any workplace. Correct. The funny thing about this, by the way, is that there was no harassment code of conduct. when this case originally went to court. This article actually says his actions were not in line with the Judicial Code of Conduct or the recently approved Harassment Code, which stated that judges had to act honorably at all times, even in private. And we would expect no less. Bare minimum, guys, bare minimum. Advocate for the judge said his client was innocent and should be found to be so. A lot of moral questions have been raised by high horse riders. This was flirting and does not constitute harassment. A picture of his was a very painful public lie. There is no evidence of this. You are not required to determine how flirting should be done, whether he does it eloquently or ineloquently. The narrow complaint is based on WhatsApp messages. In order for it to constitute, it must be unwanted, persistent, humiliating, or threatening adverse consequences. You're joking. You're absolutely joking. Mr. Advocate, apparently very uneducated about how to treat women. In the private world, you're not even allowed to comment on my outfit. He sent this stuff over WhatsApp. And then she had actually said no 13 times. What part of that is unwanted and persistent? What point, is 25 times persistent? Is 100 times persistent? Define persistent. Define unwanted. Threatening adverse consequences. You know for sure she would have lost her job. Yeah, you won't believe me. This all gets a little bit more insulting. So get off your feminist, Western, culturally superior subjective high horse, says the judge's lawyer. Excuse me? Feminist, Western, culturally superior subjective high horse? In a country with the highest gender-based, our president has stood up for 5 years in his sauna, declaring gender-based to be the most important societal issue. And we have a judge's lawyer. The fact that the judge allowed his lawyer to say this is, man, I really need to get down to Eastern Cape. Apparently, they need some moral training, ethical training. The judge's advocate, the lawyer, presenting his closing arguments at the Marathon Judicial Conduct Tribunal, suggested that the judge's allegations were fabrications being viewed through a feminist Western framework that did not apply in this instant. Mr. Uneducated Advocate Muzi, just so you know, you cannot reapply the basic principle of harassment, which has a very clear definition, according to different instances. But here's the really disgusting part. Tribunal chairperson, retired Judge Bernard, suggested that women hold all the power in relationships with men, and that the fact that men went down on a bent knee to propose was evidence of this. What the actual? I can't even begin to make sense of this. It gets even worse. Judges enjoyed rights, first as human beings. It literally says that. And the tribunal had entered the realm of two adults courting. Interpreting this in any other way would be to impose a subjective view. In closing, the judge's lawyer says there had been no abuse of culture, and that it is difficult to analyze a community of people from the outside when you are not in that community. It is worse when you assume the superiority of your own culture. The fact that Cyril stands on stage for every single sauna address, declaring his undying attention to gender-based, we have the highest gender-based rates in the world. And it's a ridiculous number of women who get murdered via gender-based violence, which also is 90% caused by alcohol consumption. So this cycle, this toxic cycle in society, is because we had leaders in positions who get away with this, who do this, and thanks to great political maneuvering, are put back into positions of power. And then they have the audacity to think that bringing in culturally appropriate flirting is okay. When people see so-called leaders being kept in positions of power or put in positions of power because of political maneuvering, then it really just becomes a free-for-all. Now we must all just do what we want. And what does the end of that look like? Which is the exact same mindset of the EFF. We don't care. We must just destroy anything that shows us up with absolute no strategy or clarity on the way forward, no plan, just problems. And in South Africa, I guess we need to stand up and say, enough's enough. Honestly, can't be handling this anymore. And then we have to brace ourselves because this sort of stuff is going to take years to fix. The ANC have brought this country to its knees. And these individuals and the leaders they report to and their bosses, and it eventually gets to Cyril, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. You are an abhorrent example of a human, never mind a leader. Anyway, I'm sorry, my videos are so mildly depro this week. We'll try to do something fun tomorrow. Guys, that's my ramble. I hope you found this insightful. It definitely wasn't enjoyable. But yes, this is the sort of content we do need to be sharing. It really does reinforce the importance of local elections coming up. So, of course, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment and share. Every view helps, every subscriber helps. Really does get my channel to grow. YouTube's like, hey, people like this. And then they share it with more people. Guys, I hope you have a great day. We'll get through this together. Keep that chin up. Over and out.